Linh-chan and Dimi-chan play games. Welcome back, Chan-chans. Oh. So this one gives me lots of money if I catch it. Look at that money. Oh.
Oh, she just knocked me over.
I want the money. I don't care about being knocked over. I'm greedy.
Don't be greedy, it's not good.
But it is good. You get lots of money.
Just enough. You can be greedy enough. But just don't be too greedy.
Oh my god, my flashlight is like facing the ground or something. There we go.
You need a better controller.
Send us a controller, Chan-chans. Watch, by that time we're not playing GameCube games anymore.
Well, I think you only have GameCube games, right?
No, I have GameCube games, Wii games, and Wii U games. Because I am such a gamer. But yeah, I don't really play games much. I prefer learning stuff. not that you don't learn from games, but I feel like I spend most of my time reading and absorbing information.
And learning interesting stuff.
I mean, lately I've been trying to learn Vietnamese, which is going okay for something that I am doing casually for the past few months.
Yeah, like 5-10 minutes a day. Or it's more like 15 minutes because it's like a drive to work, right?
But I don't want to get overwhelmed at the same time because anytime I get really into something, I spend way too much time on it and I get way overwhelmed really quickly. So I'm trying for that not to happen while I move this wall.
I find that's really cool.
The secret passageway.
Maybe we can have like a moving wall in our house one day.
When we have a house.
Yeah.
Spoiler, we don't have a house. If the Chan-chans want to buy us a house. I did not press the button. But it said don't press. Or did it say press me?
I didn't see it.
In any case. Who's there? Who dares disturb us? Sleep on us, Luigi. Look, guys, Luigi's right here.
So they have the brother?
Yeah, they took Mario.
Oh, to where?
Who knows? Oh, he got scared. But yeah, so I've been learning Vietnamese lately. And like last week we went to your parents and I was like, cool, I'm gonna test out my Vietnamese skills, and of course I forget everything at that point.
Yeah,
it's like when the spotlight's on you, you forget everything.
Yeah.
And of course also, like, I'm trying to understand them. Like, it stopped being the point where I hear music whenever they talk.
Yeah.
Because your mom doesn't speak English at all. She only speaks Vietnamese.
Yeah, but she understands some things. She understands certain things. My dad learned English when we first came to America. Like, he took night classes for a little bit. And so he knows enough to get by, but, like, not efficiently. Like, he still gets his pronouns mixed up. He uses he for everything, even when it's a female.
Leaves out articles.
He uses he a lot. But I think it's because he didn't learn enough to have that embedded in his mind that, you know, there's a difference. Yeah. Even though he understands it, but like when it's his turn to utilize what he's learned, like, it
doesn't come out. Just like me in the spotlight. For him, automatically he just uses he because that's like in Vietnamese. Is that the case or not necessarily?
What do you mean?
Like, would he use the same pronoun for everything?
No.
Or maybe he just didn't catch that you have different pronouns for stuff in English.
No, he knows. I mean, he knows there are different pronouns. I mean, it's every language, but it's just, I guess he never learned it enough and learned it professionally enough. And like we said, one of our previous episodes before, where when you learn a language at a later age and at a later time in your life, it's not that it's impossible to learn it. It just takes a lot more effort than 1 or 2 hours a day. That kind of idea, you know. So it's, I feel like had he, you know, didn't have to go to work all the time to, you know.
Yeah, and if you don't necessarily had any formal education learning language before, it's not necessarily easier later when it's like your first time.
Yeah.
You know. Oh, so I think something's under this current. Do you think something's under there?
The ghost? Yeah. His name is Bamboo.
His name is Bamboo? Well, he went next door. We need to catch him.
Yeah, but my dad has an accent too, like a very thick accent as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know if he has a dialect of English though.
Like as you mentioned before to me, he does speak, like when your uncle came by, he speaks the same way as your dad. You know?
My uncle?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he has that same. I wouldn't necessarily say only the accent is the same, but also the way he speaks is the same. And to a certain extent, like, I would say a lot of Vietnamese people kind of sound like that.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it has to do with our the fact that Vietnamese is a very tonal language, and so then there's a lot of intonations,
and the grammar is
different. So I think that played a part in how they produce English.
And the reason why it's so consistent is because coming from Vietnamese, when you do learn English, that's like you end up using those rules whether you're paying attention to it or not, you know?
Yeah, and also like a lot of people get mixed up when it comes to like a dialect and an accent. Like there's a very they're very similar in a way.
Yes.
You know? So it's easy to get them mixed up.
So for instance, like your dad does not speak English properly, for instance. But that's like our version of English that we're considering that he's not speaking properly. However, if you compare him to the other Vietnamese immigrants, he speaks like them consistently. Yeah. You know? So I would, in fact, call that a dialect of standard English. It's Vietnamese vernacular.
in that community, I guess, right? So then in that case, that would be a dialect.
Yeah, because you're using rules. It's not like you're just like using the language haphazardly. You are using a set of rules. They're just different than the set of rules that a native speaker of English, at least in Southern California, uses.
Yeah, kind of like we have something like everyone has an accent. Like the way I speak is my own accent compared to you. The way you speak is your own accent. But compare overall, California English is a dialect of English. Is that correct? Is that how you define dialect? Like if you go to New York, that's a different dialect, right? Like we would still understand each other, but our choice of words, our choice of structure is slightly off. So that's what constitutes a dialect, right?
Yeah, so I would say anytime that you're speaking the same language, like both parties can understand each other without like needing an interpreter in any way. But like each party in the conversation uses different words, different word choices, different grammar structures. Anytime that happens, but you can still understand each other, I'd say that's a different dialect. You need to collect the money. Money. So in a way, like everyone kind of speaks a different dialect because everyone learns to speak differently, you know?
Yeah. Like different background, different settings, different people that they encounter influence that your speech.
Exactly.
And your habits of using speech, actually. So then that you have your own dialect. Now, what is an accent then?
So an accent, I would say, is how you produce speech specifically. So whether you roll your R's at every moment that you speak would be an accent.
Okay.
Because the rules for production are different.
So then would you, if that's the case, would you say the influence of a different language, maybe if you're a bilingual learner, then would you say that the influence of your native language on that second language is now creating this accent?
So maybe. So specifically,
like with the R, like people who speak Spanish would maybe roll their R's more when they say an English word rather than a person who just have English backgrounds and no Spanish background. Now would that be an accent?
Yes, that would absolutely be an accent. So specifically, I think that's like a naive misunderstanding of the fact that we all use like a Roman script between Spanish and English. So when they see an R, they just assume they need to do the R, even though it's completely different from an English R sound.
Yeah,
it's a retroflexive R.
Yeah.
I think. Or is that the French one?
I don't know. I don't know.
In any case,
I don't know
R is very different from R, which is very different from L. So, for example, in Japanese, many people assume that when a Japanese person says a word with an R in it, like ringo, then that's an R, even though I would not say that's an R, that's an L.
Yeah,
like
that's
where it's produced in the mouth it's closer to an L than it is an R. And it's closer to a Spanish R than it is to an English L, if anything. It's like halfway in between.
Okay.
So that's what an accent is, and an accent can actually be picked up and changed fairly easily. It just requires training. You need someone to tell you that you're doing it incorrectly, and then that will let you know how you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
We're finding so many of these guys. But like a dialect is something that... Why is this one giving me so much trouble? A dialect is something that we all kind of have a unique dialect. Like the way we speak is different.
It's linguistically can be proven, right? It can be proven linguistically.
I wouldn't say you can prove anything linguistically. It's not math, so I shy away from calling things proofs in linguistics. But you could definitely say that no two people speak the same way, therefore they speak two different dialects.
Right.
And it's kind of like a misconception in like Chinese that like, oh yeah, all over China they speak different dialects. No, all over China they speak different languages. You can take people from two neighboring towns in China, and guess what? Neither of them are going to speak Mandarin, and neither of them are going to speak the same language either. It's like,
well, Mandarin has become the standard language for China, for pretty much Asia.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't mean that all those different regions don't have their own language as well.
Exactly. So,
like most of the time, all the places in China have their own language. In addition to that, they learn English as their
Mandarin,
their communication with the world.
Yeah.
Kind of like in Europe, a lot of countries have English as their standard language, as their primary standard language. And then their own country's language is secondary, just so they can interact with the world.
Yeah, like becoming more and more so.
I know roughly there are about 37 countries out there that use English as their primary language.
I'd say Europe is still holding on to its like native languages, and like English
like
is
their Romance language.
Yeah, like
Italian, French, German.
Yeah, so they're sticking to those, but they are also learning English not as a second language speaker of English, but as a native speaker of English. So they're learning English at a very young age to the point where you can say that they're bilingual in English. They learned it from the beginning. But however, they're learning a different dialect because they speak like consistently differently. You know, like you can tell a German speaking rather than a British person speaking or a French person speaking. Like they're also probably speaking more proper English than we are, ironically enough, because of education systems.
But it's interesting that English is it's much older than British English.
Yeah, and we'll get to that next time. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Linh-chan, Dimi-chan, Linh-chan, Linh-chan, Dimi-chan, Linh-chan, Dimi-chan, Linh-chan, Dimi-chan.